host, Joyce Hochsprung. Welcome to In the Garden. Today I have with me two of my Master Gardener colleagues, Tanya Vosik and Debbie Kaharski. And so that I don't have to just talk to myself the whole time, they're going to help me out. And today we're going to do a little episode called Cultivating Conversations, and we're going to be talking about ordering or purchasing seeds from the seed catalogs in the store, how to read the seed catalogs, how to read the seed packets and help you plan your garden, and even ordering plants online, live plants. So here we go, we'll get started. We're going to start out with,
what should I know? Where do I live?
you go, well, I live in my house, right? Or my apartment, or dumb question, right? But know your zone. What growing zone are you? How many frost-free days do you have to grow something? Because if you're looking at something in the seed catalog or in the rack that you really, really want, and you look at it and it says 140 days, it's not going to make it here in Minnesota in our growing season. Our last frost date in the spring, the average is around May 15th. And in the fall, the first frost, the average is between October 1st and October 5th. So on a bad year, you might only get a 90-day growing season. If we have a really good year, early spring, late frost, you might squeeze 120 days out. And that might change as we continue to warm, but you can't count on it. So plan accordingly.
What do I want to plant?
Gosh. What do you like to, if you're doing vegetables, what is it you like to eat? Don't like tomatoes? Don't plant tomatoes. You like sweet corn? Plant sweet corn, but make sure you have enough space for it because you need to plant that in blocks because it's wind pollinated. What else do you thinking of?
What about where should I plant?
That sounds silly, right? In the ground? Well, maybe not. Maybe in a raised bed. Maybe you don't have room for a traditional in-the-ground garden or even a raised bed, but you can still grow some things in containers.
I think I have an idea. What's my next step?
Well, decide, do you have room for an in-ground garden? If so, great. Do you have a raised bed? How big is it? How many plants can you fit in it? Well, first thing you might want to do is think about what do you want to grow? What would you like to grow? If there's no problems with space, what is it you like to eat from the garden? So figure that out first. Then look at your space. Now, if you just have containers and you want to grow tomatoes, you can still do that. You need a large container, at least 5 gallons, and you probably want to stick with a determinate type tomato, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But suppose you just want a few herbs. You can grow most of those in a relatively small container. I still like to use a fairly good sized one, at least a gallon or 2. Parsley has a taproot that goes down quite a ways, so you want enough depth to give that some space. But you can grow a lot of herbs in the smaller containers. You can grow radishes or lettuce. Lettuce you can grow in a fairly small, shallow container. You can use it as a centerpiece on your patio table if you want, as long as it gets enough sun. Medium containers, you could probably grow a few beans, some cabbage, lemongrass maybe. You might even be able to do a batch of a hill of potatoes. Maybe a bush-type cucumber plant, an eggplant, peppers. If you want sweet potatoes or tomatoes, cantaloupe, watermelon, you're going to need a big container. And again, you're going to look for varieties of whatever plant it is that are going to fit in that. Determinate ones or bush type are going to be your best bet for containers.
Sometimes you can also plant your herbs or lettuces around your tomato plant too.
Yes, you can. Another good tip. because you often prune off the bottom branches or leaves on your tomato, so that would leave some room for some smaller herbs
Right,
around
and
it.
some of that stuff matures before the tomato would get excessively huge.
Right.
Where would I get my seeds?
Well, you've all seen the seed racks in the stores, and you can certainly buy from there. You're not going to have the selection you will from a seed catalog, from ordering online or from the paper catalog. And we brought just a few of the catalogs that have been coming. We've got John Sheepers, Totally Tomatoes, Harris, Territorial, Pine Tree, Johnny's, Baker's Creek, Young. What do we else have here? Burpee, Select Seeds.
Prairie Moon.
Yeah, Prairie Moon is for native plants. So there are lots of others. These are just some that I have gotten in the mail this year. So that's not to say there are not others. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, how do I know if they're going to be any good? Well, if it's a reputable seed company, your seeds are likely to be pretty good. And you'll have a huge selection of varieties. Because I like to sit in January when it's nasty outside and look at the seed catalogs. I personally order most of mine from catalogs because then I have the selection I want. I don't know about you guys.
Correct.
I do, yes. I like to grow heirlooms, so.
Okay, so it depends on, again, what do you want to grow. You can look at where, there's a term called provenance, which has to do with where a plant is grown and what it's adapted to. Some people will claim that with seeds it makes a difference. Others say, nah, it doesn't. So I don't know of any research that really is definitive one way or another. There's some things, some study will point this out, another one will say something else. So it depends. I kind of laugh when I say that because when I started the Master Gardener training, one of the instructors said, you aren't going to believe how many times you're going to preface your answer with, it depends. But I like Pine Tree. They have smaller quantities, usually at cheaper prices. I mean, I don't want 1,000 tomato seeds, so I'm going to, stick with something where I get 25 or so, 20 maybe. Some like Johnny's and Harris, not sure where the Harris one went here, but tend to cater a little more to, they do have home packets too in some things, but you kind of want to watch, especially if you're online, so that you don't click the wrong thing and order yourself 5,000 seeds of something when you really only wanted, 25 or 30. And people also ask, how long can I keep the seeds? It's going to depend somewhat on what it is. Most things I have kept up to 3 to 5 years and used them and had just a slight dip in germination. Other things like parsley and parsnips, I usually order new ones of those every year if I'm planting them because they just don't keep as well. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, sometimes I think too in my book, those little packets that come with things, the silica packets, if you put those in with your seeds, it will help prolong the life of that.
And it's going to depend how you store them.
Right.
Correct.
If you store them someplace hot and humid, they're not going to hold. But if you keep them somewhere cool and dry, you'll be okay. That most seeds will store quite well. You are going to lose some germination each year, but what I do is I just, plant a couple extras or put 2 seeds in the container, or in my starting block instead of a single one.
See what comes up.
And then I
Yes.
just
And then,
snip off the weaker one. So
good tip. Good tip. I see, Deb, you brought your catalog to see
Yes,
how-
I have found rather than looking through them, I have them all sorted by varieties and
She's much more organized than I am.
Yes.
Mine are in
and
a
I
box.
only put them in single
Yes.
so I can read that packet before I plant or whatever, but I just found. And then somewhere in these pages, I do have the little silica things just in one of the pages.
Okay.
And this is just a 3-ring binder, and I believe it was baseball card holders.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what.
Yes, keeps them all in one spot.
Yep. I use a seed locker. It's a metal box that seals. It has a ring. It seals. And then I
Keeps
keep
the
that.
moisture from getting
Yep.
in.
Yep. And then I just have a shelf in my basement. It's a nice, steady temperature. And that's how I store my seeds. So everybody is completely different in their there's never a right way and a wrong way.
Whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you
Yeah, some people will put them in a glass jar in a cool spot.
in a cool spot. Correct.
So,
Okay, so when I'm reading these seed catalogs, I get confused. And I don't know really what I'm looking at. One catalog says one thing, another catalog says another. What do I look at?
let's see. Let's find one of the ones that had a key. Sometimes it's in the middle, sometimes it's in the back, sometimes it's in the front. Sometimes the tomato key is by the tomatoes, at the beginning of the tomatoes. So you just have to do some looking, and if you're online, it's the same concept. You just have to start at the beginning and kind of look through. But for example, this one has a key for the various symbols, dual season variety. The clock or the pocket watch means it's an heirloom variety. So check out the key for whatever one you're ordering from, and just look through. Some have, let's see, where's this one? Okay, we'll use, this is Johnny's. They have a key in here as well. Again, this one's in the front. A little J, oval means that it's developed specifically by Johnny's Seeds. And CNG is certified naturally grown. And whatever that means on there we go. It's verified to meet high standards for ecological production through a peer review process. There, how's that? An F1 hybrid is the offspring of a cross. It's the first generation cross of two plants. Open pollinated means that and that's usually designated with OP. That's going to mean it's a non-hybrid variety, and it can reproduce itself with relatively stable traits from one generation to the next. Seeds that you save from open pollinated varieties will produce a similar or almost very similar plant to the parent plant. If you save seeds from a hybrid plant, it will grow. You're not going to get the same plant that you saved the seed from. It's going to revert back to one of the parents usually. Anything to add to that?
No.
Pelleted. This is great for things like carrots and beets
Petunias.
and petunias, things that have very, very fine seed. It makes it much easier to space them out and to hang on to them. So, you maybe don't have to use the tweezers or something. But so pelleted seed for those tiny seeds is a really great thing. And it's basically, they're just kind of a kaolin clay coating on them that dissolves when it rains or they get watered.
The pelleted seeds also help if you use a seed planter with the discs,
Right. Yes.
and it goes through that the
Mechanism?
mechanism. Yes, very good. A lot easier. They just fall fast, easier.
Okay.
And you can see them in your row.
Even if you plant them in individual pea pots, you can see where they ended up so that they don't go
Yep.
to the side
Or
on the
roll off,
ground.
or
Roll off. Yes.
And you wait there for
Yes.
2 weeks and nothing comes up.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
find that's especially with the beets and the carrots, it's much easier.
So we've talked about symbols, and like I said, each one is going to have their own set of symbols. Some will be pretty basic. Let's see.
And there's some that list carrots and what the disease of carrots, peppers and what.
And it will
They're
tell you,
resistant.
like tomatoes. Well, let's see, in Minnesota, where's my notes here? The most common tomato diseases are septoria leaf spot, early blight, and bacterial spot. So if you're looking for tomato seed, you might want to look for ones that list those as being resistant to. Now, unfortunately, there are not a lot of them out there that are resistant to early blight, so then it comes down to how you're growing them, and that's a whole nother show.
Episode.
Yeah.
Another episode.
Yeah, you could probably do another episode just on
Just on
tomatoes.
tomatoes.
Yes.
But I'm going to talk just a second here about, okay, where is the key for this one? There's a better one somewhere in the magazine, but it'll show you full sun, mostly sunny, half sun, half shade, mostly shady, deep shade, things like that. So when you're choosing, and this would be more for your annuals and perennials, flowers, than it would be for your vegetables, although and most of you probably know that most vegetables require full sun. You can get by with your lettuce and things like that. Some of your greens you can grow with in part shade. So sometimes I've known people who were determined enough they planted in containers and simply moved their container around the yard, had it on wheels and moved it around the yard to follow the sun. It works if you're determined enough.
Okay.
Okay.
What do some of the other terms that we need to know in the catalog?
With your vegetables, we already talked about the growing season length, so days to maturity. We mentioned that if you're looking at especially some of the squash and the large pumpkins, you need a pretty long growing season for those. In Minnesota, we just don't have it. Now you can gain a little bit by starting them inside, but that's kind of tricky. You don't want to start them too soon, or they'll start vining too much and get tangled in your house before you ever get them out, and they resent root disturbance, so you have to be very careful when putting the transplants out.
I would suggest if you are going to do that, use a compostable peat pot or jiffy pot
pellet
or
or
something so
something.
that you can just set it right into the ground.
Without messing with the roots
Yes.
too much. So, and if you're doing an actual peat pot that you put soil into, you need to tear off the top part of the pot when you plant it, because if it's sticking up above the soil, it will that will dry out, and it will draw moisture from lower down and dry out your plant faster. Okay. Direct sow. If it says direct sow, that means just plant it right in the ground, whether it's in your raised bed or your container or wherever you're planting. Those are the easiest ones. You just make a little furrow, look at the depth you're planting it, and planting depth is going to vary by what you're planting. Pumpkins, squash are going to be planted deeper than carrots or radishes. They're going to be planted very shallow. So look at the size. Usually the smaller the seed, the shallower you're planting. Some things will say disease resistant. Some will say disease tolerant. What's the difference? Disease resistant means that it's got certain characteristics bred into it that make it less likely for whatever disease pathogens, whether it's a fungus or viral or whatever, to enter into the plant and reproduce on or in the plant. So that's resistant. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's less likely. Tolerant. Tolerant means it can get the disease, it can still become infected, and still produce a fairly decent crop. The disease will be less severe, or the damage will be less severe than on a plant that's susceptible. Hope that clears it up for you.
It gets confusing.
It does. There's a lot.
There's a lot.
And if you're just starting out, just remember to keep it simple. Start with a small spot and just a few things. maybe the 2 or 3 things that you like the best. So,
Okay, so I'm a tomato lover. Everybody should know that.
It's the best part of
Indeterminate.
Minnesota.
Everybody in Minnesota loves their tomatoes. Determinate, indeterminate.
okay,
How do I know?
your seed packet or your catalog is usually going to tell you if a variety is determinate or indeterminate. And what that means is determinate plants will grow, set all their fruit, and the fruit will all ripen usually within about a 2 to 3 week period, and then they're done. But those are good for containers or small spaces. If you're canning and you want to get your canning all done at once, great to have a bunch of those because you just pick them all, get it done, and out of the way. Indeterminate tomatoes you can still certainly use for canning, but they're going to continue growing and setting fruit up until frost or cold weather stops them. So they'll just keep going and they'll keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's basically what it means, the difference between the determinate and the indeterminate. If you've got a big garden, personally, I usually go mostly with indeterminate just because I like being able to go out and grab tomatoes at whenever, all summer long once they start. Okay, what else are we looking at?
Indeterminate to plan on staking.
Staking.
Yes.
Yes.
Staking or caging,
Yes.
because
They'll go.
basically they're a vine.
Yep. They go all over.
They will go everywhere. So if you put a cage around them when basically when you plant them almost, or very shortly after. And I'm talking a sturdy cage, not one of these little bitty wire
Nope.
ones. Those are going to do nothing.
Nope.
You need a good sturdy one, or you can use steel posts or some other really sturdy post and tie the tomato to it as it grows, or put one on each side and kind of
Yep.
use a figure-8 tie around the stem to hold them upright as they grow.
More maintenance.
Yes,
Yes.
there's more maintenance.
More maintenance, I would say, with
with the indeterminates.
indeterminate.
And some people, and I like to pinch off the lowest branches,
Yep.
so there's air circulation underneath. Keeps the air flowing, less disease. And I also always put down some mulch under them. Now you can use red plastic mulch, you can use landscape fabric, you can use straw, leaves,
Yep.
whatever. And I put that down when I plant, because once you have some of these blights and funguses in your soil, they are there.
They're there.
And when you water, if you overhead water, or if it rains and you get a hard rain, it splashes soil up on the leaves, and you're introducing those fungal spores onto your plants.
Yep.
So I try to keep that done. Do I always get it done? No. So do as I say, not as I do on this case. But that'll help out. It's not a guarantee that you won't get, like last year we had people got flooded out their
Yep.
gardens, or they just stayed wet all summer. It was not a great year for tomatoes. So, maybe this year will be better, because, gardeners, hope springs eternal. We're always saying, we're always hopeful. We're
Always
always
going to be better next
Yep.
year.
And in January, when we're planning, we're not going to have any hot, sweaty days. We're not going to have any windstorms. We're not going to have bugs. It's the perfect garden in January.
We're so hopeful.
So we hope if you have any garden questions that you'll reach out to one of us
Reach out to one of us or
any of the other master gardeners. So we'll see you later in the garden.
Yep. Thank you.